Hi there, wonderful people, and welcome to the Finnovator podcast. My name is Stuart Bell. I'm a business coach. I am the founder of Adaria Coaching Consulting. I am the creator of the Leverage Advice Firm program and author of Finnovation. And for the last decade, it's been my pleasure to work with financial experts, advisors, brokers, accountants, and other people whose knowledge, when applied to other people's situations, generates a really great financial result to help them improve the business side of what they do. And what I'd like to share as part of this podcast series are some of the interviews, some of the one-on-one discussions I've had with clients, with subject matter experts, or just people who had fantastic success in their business, and really unpack the nuts and bolts, how they did it, the mistakes they made, the time frames, the tools they used. In other words, getting really practical. And I'm hoping, like many businesses I've worked through, you can take some of this insight combined with some of the tools and some of the suggestions and apply it to your own business to generate great results. And specifically to help you, have more impact on the clients you work with, to free yourself up so you can do more of the high value work and less of the low value work, and equally importantly, to create profitable, enduring businesses on an ongoing basis. This is the first in a series. And first cab off the rank, I want to share with you probably one of my favorites. Master of Reviews with James Williamson of Millhaven Financial. James was actually one of the very first consulting clients I ever worked with. We worked together for over 8 years. And as well as that, he's also one of my favorite people in the industry, a fantastic advisor and just an all-around great practitioner. Specifically in this podcast or this discussion, we're going to go deep on an area that I think is really, really, really relevant right now on a number of different levels, and that is ongoing service propositions, and specifically how to make a review, your review meeting, your progress check, your strategy refresh, whatever you want to call it. Make it something that is really valuable and do it in an efficient way. As you'd expect, diving into reviews, we talked about everything from technology, what to use and what not to use. We talked about the ongoing service propositions itself. We talked about segmentation. We talked about how to say yes, how to transition, how to say no to certain clients. And as you'd expect, we talked a lot about pricing and some of the outcomes that James achieved as a result of really facing this one head on, I think are worth sort of hearing, both from a perspective of how he did it, but also to give you confidence that moving your business across from an older model to a new model is not the barrier that it potentially seems to be, although I'm sure many of you already realize that. But anyway, as part of this is just one example of one thing I want to share. I'm also going to be sharing in other podcasts kind of the little tactics, the things that are easy to implement in your business from the program as we do them week by week, that you can take and implement, not projects, not things that take months, but rather things that you can get up and running in a week. But this is the first of our one-to-one masterclass session. So I hope you enjoy it. My suggestion is, if you can just take one thing from this, whether you're listening in the car or you're listening on the road or in the office, if you can just find one thing to implement in your business in the next week, month, then that will be, a return on your listening time, which I think is the best thing for me. Of course, if you really like this, I'd love for you to subscribe and see what else is coming down the pike, because we've got some of the best one-to-one discussions over the past 2 years coming up fast. But without a shadow of doubt, let's hand it over to me and James to talk about how to nail your review in Master of Reviews. The background to this is I've known James a very long time. James is actually one of the first clients I started working with when I became an independent business coach, so to speak. And it's just been one of those sort of relationships where you start off working together and then you become friends. And I've got so much respect for James and what he does, so much so that, when family members ask me which planner would I recommend in the area, James is the one I send them to. But we've done a lot of projects down the years, but this is the one or the story I really want to share with you, because James does a few things really, really well. He is really good at managing client relationships, like outstanding. And not that long ago, he made a decision that he wanted to take his business in a certain direction, which wouldn't involve sort of being junior planners. And to do that, he had to get very, very good at delivering his reviews at a certain volume. And to do that, he had to create a system or master a system which enabled him to really be the one sort of showing up and have the team do the setup and the packup the other side. On top of that, he's really, really good at delivering experience, and he's very structured in the way that he's done it. And we're going to talk through a bit of this today. But I guess one of the key stories behind this wasn't just delivering a review or developing it with, for the sake of doing it. Although that was a big part of it. It was also to move his business from a place that there was some risks, some legislative risk in his business model, to a place where he didn't have to worry about that. And that's the pricing story I'm keen to explore today. There's a third part I want to talk about. And it's about really managing time. James is such a good manager of his time, and he's done it through learning some systems and some ways of doing it. And I guess there's another part to this which I wanted to sort of kick off with, because right here and now, there's so much going on in the industry. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got stuff on. And I've had conversations with people recently indicating that they just felt there was too much to do. And I think most of us will have been in that situation where you feel like there's too much to do. But the challenge for me, and particularly when I'm having a conversation with somebody and they say, whether you're on the program or not on the program, and they say, I don't have time to do X, Y, and Z, or I don't have time to do this, is, sometimes we look at certain aspects of practice management or certain aspects of what I do, and you see, I have to do a project here, I have to do a project there. But right here and now, with what's going on, with everybody overwhelmed, I think finding time to get stuff done, this is the project. And we're going to talk through a number of sort of things we work together and James has done on his own in order to find that time around how to reduce the number of options available to you, how to sort of get this habit of accepting tasks, with the greatest intention but not completing. Distraction we're going to talk about is a big one, being disorganized and not planning ahead well enough, and ultimately not doing what you want to do. Because I guess over this next 6 months in particular, I think if you're finding yourself overwhelmed now and not having time to do some of these things, like get on the front foot with client engagement and the pricing transitions and all these sort of things that are kind of a must do in order to make it through this next period, then you might want to consider that the project you need to be working on is to find the time in your diary and remove yourself from the overwhelm. And as James will share a story that we were talking about just before we came on, if some of the world's most successful people can find the time to do it, then I'm pretty much sure everybody in this room can do the same. So with that in mind, we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about reviews. We're going to talk about pricing transitions, and we're going to talk about how to find the time to get it all done. So it's going to be a really good session, and I know you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So, James.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good job.
I was just listening to some of those questions. I think I'm going to cancel my appointments for the rest of the day.
Yeah. This is a new 8-hour webinar. We've got a lot to get through, haven't we? But are you pretty? Yeah, there are some great questions. I almost feel like we should just answer the questions. But I'm pretty comfortable that most of, if not all of it, are stuff that you've covered off as part of this process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've made some really big changes to the review process over the last 2 years, and still making changes as we go forward. So still trying to tweak things, make things a little bit more efficient, a little bit better client experiences. So all of that we've been actively looking at and continue to as we go forward. So, but it's been the big change was probably a couple of years ago where we sort of changed the way we looked at reviews holistically and then decided what we were going to do from there. So.
Perfect. So I'm keen to get into the questions as much as possible because there's a lot of them. But before we do, just in case for whatever reason people don't know you, can you give us a little bit of who you work with, the kind of clients you help, how your business works, the kind of, the team, the size of the business? Just give us a 2-minute overview.
Okay. So really very much holistic clients we work with now. We don't really work with any transactional clients at all. So every client we believe you need a holistic approach to, and that's the type of planning we like to do. Mm-hmm. So that's really important. I started the business back in 2006 with 2 clients from my garage. I just bought my first house, just had my first child. Look, now we're 6 of us in the business. I'm the principal advisor. I have an associate advisor that works very, very closely with me, Keith, who's, we very much run a 2-advisor approach to clients. And effectively 4 support staff. So, and I'm not quite sure that's enough, but I'll come back to that.
And you also embraced outsourcing as well. So your team is Manila based, is that right?
So I've got two in Manila, Jen and Leslie. Absolutely awesome. We originally started with them going through an agency and then very quickly took them off that and we employ them directly now. Yep. So they work solely for us. and that has worked really, really well. Obviously, your standard challenges with having an offshore team, but it's partially onshore, partially offshore, and that for us works really, really, really well. So
beautiful. Now, when you started the business, if I remember rightly, like a lot of people, I hear the stories, and when they start a business, it's because there's something about the way or the business they were with before, or they perceive they don't want to do it a certain way, and that drives them towards a certain model.
Yeah, well, I came from the UK in 2001. My wife's Australian, hence why we came over here. She decided she didn't like the cold anymore, so we decided to move to somewhere warmer, which is fine. But I actually trained and did a lot of my training in insolvency in the UK. So I came from quite a, let's call it, a negatively motivated industry. I really wanted to do something that was a bit, I always had a background in knowledge in finance and economics, etc. And I really just wanted to do something a bit more positive. I'd done sort of 10 years in insolvency, and although I learned absolutely an amazing amount on that side, I really just wanted a different, more positive skew. So I thought, how can I adapt what I've learned to, watched all these people do things they shouldn't do or couldn't do well. How do I flip that and make it into helping people obviously grow their wealth and obviously achieve their objectives? That's really what the catalyst was. And that's when I worked for a financial planning firm first, a particularly non-compliant financial planning firm, I hasten to add. This was in the 2001, 2002 days when FSR had just come in. This was one-page SOAs before that. And, so it was interesting times. But then just decided I wanted to do it by myself. I thought I could do it better. I'd run a business in the UK, so I did have some experience in running a business, which was helpful. But really just wanted to see if I could do it myself. And that's how it started. So.
Beautiful. 2006, you kicked it off. And what kind of firm did you want it to be from the very start?
Oh, I think I had great aspirations in terms of where I wanted it to be. But I think the reality was I was building a business from scratch. And I think initially we were at the stage we will take whatever clients we could, to be honest. And we built the business very much like that. Yep. I'd always had aspirations of the holistic piece because I always believed that was the way to go. But the reality is when you build a business, you take what clients you can and you build it from there, and you hope you can then develop it into the aspirational business you want it to be. I think it's very difficult to say from 2 clients, I'm only taking holistic clients and that's all I'm going to do. At the end of the day, we've got mortgages to pay and children to feed and, at the end of the day. But I think we're at a place now where we can genuinely say that's what we do. So it's taken a long time to get there, but I'm very comfortable with the work we do with clients now and the type of work we do. So for us, that's been it's been a big journey, but there's a long way to go still. I still don't think we're done. We've got a long way to go.
Okay. So you've been through a few iterations of the business, and I know we originally one of the strategies you had is to bring in a junior advisors and sort of build them up and tell us a bit about sort of how it's evolved in terms of your thinking through those phases.
Yeah, so I suppose the idea was always to try and replicate me in the business. Yep. And I think I made the mistake on a number of occasions by trying to bring in perhaps younger advisors that maybe weren't quite experienced enough to take on the type of clients we were looking after.
Yeah.
To try and replicate me in that regard. And look, ultimately, it was successful to a point, but it really wasn't getting the job done.
Yeah.
So that really culminated in where we got to a couple of years ago, where we made that wholesale change about how we're going to address clients. And that's what we've been doing since. So I really felt that I had to back myself. I think you've really got to turn where your skills lie. Mm-hmm. And for me, I kept, obviously as business owners, financial advisors, practice managers, we're often wearing lots of different hats. And I think it's important that at some point you've got to choose a hat. And it's not that you won't wear other hats, but there's always your favorite hat that you've got to go back to. And that's, I think, where you should concentrate skills. And for me, and that's sitting in front of clients and being a financial advisor and talking strategy and helping people along that pathway. That's, I think, where my skills lie. Other people might tell me differently, but that's where I think it lies.
Because my perception is that's your skill set. I mean, like, you're very good at managing relationships, but you're also a bit like me. Like, you like to tinker. You like to play with the systems and processes. Did you find that you sometimes would drift into doing things that weren't actually important, and they just happened to be the thing?
I think I still do from time to time. I've got a bit of I'm probably a bit like you. I like the technology space. I'm always trying to find ways of doing things a little bit differently and a little bit more efficiently. I do tinker in that space probably more than I should.
Yeah,
and I think if you ask the staff, they would say that James does like to change things. But that's I think change is the price of survival, and you have to change, and we're in some significant change at the moment. So if you don't adapt, you've got no choice.
I love that. I'm writing that down. Change is the price of survival. It's as you heard me say a number of different times, the whole thing about Darwin supposedly said evolution is survival of the fittest, but of course rubbish. It's the most adaptable.
Yeah, I think so.
There'd be T-Rexes running around everywhere, right?
Yeah, and I think the test, if you want to test that theory, now's the time to test it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, you'd remember when FSRA rolled about.
Yep.
And it's interesting, the businesses that were huge and successful before FSRA are not the businesses that were successful over the 10 years that followed.
No.
And you can look back there and you realize the genesis of the success at that point, and it was a significant period of success. That was what they did straight away in that time period when it was coming in, and they made the adaptation, and those that didn't, they're not around anymore.
Correct. Yeah. So, certainly now's the time if you're going to change.
So 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a line in the sand. I believe we were sat in your boardroom. You've done a lot of thinking about this. What was the thinking, and what was the change of tack? Talk us through the thinking and the, what it was.
So I actually sort of go back to my, I used to watch my father work many years ago, and he was in the insolvency industry as well. And I used to watch him basically just turn up for meetings, do the meetings, and then leave. Mm-hmm. And effectively everyone else would do everything else. So, and it worked really, really well, because that's something he was particularly good at, was coming into the meeting, getting the meeting done, determining what was going to happen from a strategy point of view, and then that was his job done. And my thoughts around efficiency was, if that's really where my skills lie, how can I potentially adapt that to what we do? How do I turn up for a meeting, do the thing that I think I can add value,
okay,
but let other people that are probably better at other parts of the process do their bit as well. Yeah. So, really, that's when we sat down and we really came up with this, the setup, the show up, and the pack up, right? Yep. It's splitting that review into 3 main stages, and letting key people within those stages do the things that they're good at.
Yep.
So, there's people in my office that are much better than me at certain admin. There's people that are better at phone calls. Some people are better at writing certain things than I am. There's people that are better at strategy and numbers. But I would probably say that I'm probably one that stands out in terms of client engagement, in terms of sitting in front of clients. So let's get James doing that, and let's build the process around that. Beautiful. And that's really what we've tried to do.
And the genesis of that shut up, pack up is, I think when we talked about it, we said, if you think about when they're filming adverts or movies, Tom Cruise doesn't turn up, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and help the cameraman puts together and basically they set the equipment up, which takes a lot of time, and then Tom Cruise or whoever jumps in, he does the scene, and then he's gone, right? And then they grab the film and they edit it and they set it up, and it can be years before you see a film. And I think this is the key thing, is if you're the talent, and this isn't being egotistical, it's the bottom line, there's no one else in your business who can do what you do. And if you do more of it, retain clients, we'll talk about pricing. But if you're there setting up the camera and you're doing the pack up afterwards, your capacity is going to be constrained, right? Yeah,
and I think it's a little bit more in that you have to, and this is again something I've learned more and more over the last 2 years as I've done more and more reviews, is you've really got to prep yourself for a meeting.
Yeah.
There's a real lack, I think, and I used to do this and I was guilty of it myself, of not getting myself in the right mindset for a client meeting.
Gotcha.
Having a very, very clear objective as to what I'm going to take out of this meeting before I even go into it. And actually, if you think a client meeting could be worth $10,000 a year to you, why wouldn't you be spending at least half an hour to an hour of your time prepping for that meeting? It sort of clicked with me like 2 years ago. I need to prep properly for these meetings. And I still think you're continually trying to develop that preparation process just to make sure that we are fully versed before we go into that meeting.
So there's 3 areas I want to touch on, and there's a bunch of questions we're going to pull out along the way. I wanted to talk about the review. I definitely want to talk about the pricing because it's a very, very impressive story. And then I think we can't talk about all of this without talking about the time, which getting the message from people that I don't have time for projects, and you realize that Jesus, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we do, which is about finding time and getting efficiency. It worries me because if nothing's going to change, you're not going to get less busy, are you? Which do you think which should we start with? Which should we talk about first? Which was the kind of catalyst for it all?
I suppose in terms of if you're talking about reviews, I suppose the time management piece and getting that right is, I think, absolutely essential for getting the whole process working.
Okay. So
you happy with start with that?
Yeah, let's start with that. So I think George wanted to know, is it George? I want to know how many reviews do you do a year?
So I think we're about 148 at the moment.
So 148 reviews.
Yeah.
And some of those...
That's over 40 weeks.
Yep. Which gives you blocks where you don't do anything.
Well, that's deliberate. Obviously, everyone's got to take time off and downtime. Obviously, I've got 3 children, so I'd like to try and spend some time in the school holidays with them. So we're trying to build stuff around that. Obviously, Christmas shutdown, it's mandatory. And then you've got your PD days and all the other stuff that you've got to do, right? So that sort of stuff. So we try and do it over 40 weeks, which tends to work quite well at the moment. It's pretty hectic when we're doing reviews, but it seems to be working okay. I reckon we're pretty much at our max, though, at the moment. So
you reckon 140 is about 8? Someone else on the call is Greg. I think he's here. It's funny when you meet people who are busy, but they're in their rhythm. It's amazing what they can get through. I think when people get out of rhythm, or they're not batching, or they're not approaching it right, we've got this sprint. That's when it gets really, really hard. And Greg, I think you do around about 160. Is that right at the moment? Anyway, if he's here, he'll tell you. So let's talk about the time management, because there've been times in our coaching engagement where sometimes you turn up and you're like the Zen Buddha floating above it all, and other times you're stressed. There's a whole bunch going on.
Sure.
What are the things that you did, or what are the mindset shifts or the habits you adopted so you can get to a point where 148 plus managing the business, plus marketing, plus networking, plus doing the work feels like it's doable?
So there's a couple of different areas I'll touch on for this. I suppose the first one, which no one likes talking about much, is probably emails.
Okay.
But I tried to look at the really big things that sucked up my time.
Mm-hmm.
So emails. So I run pretty much zero inbox. If anyone knows what that is, it's effectively you end up with no emails in your inbox every day, right? And you've got to get really, really good at making decisions on what to do with emails.
Yep.
So there's a book, Getting Things Done, by
Dave Allen, isn't it?
Dave Allen, that's it.
Yeah.
He sort of takes this to a whole new level. So that's something that I practice, and not having internal emails between staff. That cuts down on email traffic.
Yeah.
So I tend to use Slack for internal communications, which is much quicker and less cumbersome.
Yep.
So the email side has been an important part of cutting down on what I do and making sure the right emails that are coming into the practice are going to the right people.
Yep.
There's no point in CCing people in for the sake of CCing. If they don't need to know, then don't let them know. So that's been a big part of it. Yep. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Chris was saying, well, that's what the delete button is for.
Yeah, that's right. So the other one that's probably been a big game changer for us is the batching of our time. Batching of my time, I should say. So the week is split into Tuesdays and Thursdays are review days, And Wednesday is new client day. Mondays is GBT day, which is getting things done.
GTD,
and Friday is GTD.
Yeah.
And Friday is effectively growth and marketing day.
Love it.
Which is where I might go out and see centers of influence or anything to do with sort of growing the business. So my diary is now completely scheduled that way.
Yeah.
So no reviews are booked on Mondays.
Love it.
No reviews on Fridays. Only reviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
So that's been a big help to making sure that you're in that right mindset for the whole day. So if I'm in review mode, I'm in review mode all Tuesday. And if I'm in review mode, I'm in review mode all Thursday. So
how do you sorry to interrupt you, but how do you make sure that firstly your clients, your team respects the time, they don't try to sneak things in, and secondly, probably most importantly, that you respect it?
Have a big stick that I beat people with. No, the team are really good at it now. So in our in terms of reviews, we try and pre-arrange all reviews a year in advance.
Right.
So at the moment, I can look in so we use Teamwork as our workflow system and the system. I can look in there at the moment and I can tell you when the next review is to the date. And that'll be a Tuesday or a Thursday, I guarantee you. So,
love it.
So now, the reality is clients will move appointments, right? But at least they know that this is roughly when the next date for their review is going to be.
Yeah.
So that's been a big win for us on that side.
What would you say, if you had a rough percentage of clients who tend to reschedule versus those who just stick to it?
It's probably about, this is a guess, but I reckon it's about 20 to 30%. But it would be by a day or two. It's not massive. They're not, and it's actually quite manageable because we're starting the process 5 to 6 weeks before.
Yeah.
We tend to be able to juggle things accordingly. Now, the overflow day is the Wednesday. So if I don't have any new clients on Wednesday, I can utilize that as a review day if I need to.
Yeah.
You've got to have some movement here. You've got to have some adjustability. That's
the thing about the ideal week, and I love the ideal week too, Chris, but one of the things is usually Easter just blows the whole thing up. And I think you've got to have that ability to move it around. I love to do the ideal month and then be able to go, right, I need 4 review days. I need 8 review days. I need 4 client days. And then you can kind of adjust because February can tend to screw everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that you, as well as having the reviews pre-booked in advance, you've got about a 5 to 6 week runway.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about the practicalities of how that works?
Yeah. So obviously this is part of the setup process. So we'll have a review date in mind for the client, which they will already know about. And the runway or the run up to that generally starts about 5 or 6 weeks. I can't remember if it is 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
But it's roughly that. I could look, but and the idea is then there's an email sequence that starts and goes out to those clients, and a lot of that is about getting obviously information from them that may have changed, updating certain information we need from them, us providing them with things that we might have to update the FSG as part of, there's compliance stuff that needs to happen as well. Really just getting them prepped, ready for that review date. So if anything does flag prior, we can obviously deal with it and it doesn't ultimately affect the review. So that gives us enough. It's really just about giving us time to obviously avoid delaying the review, as well as getting all the information we need prior to doing the reports and the analysis of their situation before we sit down with them.
Love it. I wanted to ask, actually, George, this I'm going to pull this question out. I've got it. By the way, I've got everyone's questions in front of me. I'm going to get through them all, but George's is relevant to what we're talking about now. Obviously, the length of time it takes you to do the reviews and how many you do in a day is a big part of the efficiency and the batching. Can you give us a bit of an overview of how long yours take to actually deliver them and how many you get fit into a day?
I like to do 2, but I can do 3. Mm-hmm. 3's I don't know if a lot of the advisors will understand when you're pretty in full flow in a review meeting, it can be quite mentally draining.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tend to find that if you do a couple of hours with a client twice in a day, it can be quite, if you do 3 times, it can be quite draining mentally. So roughly an hour and a half, I reckon, to 2 hours, depending on the client. Probably half an hour, that's just your standard chatting, rapport building, catch up, and then obviously into the review. So 2 is ideal. 3 will do.
You wouldn't want to too many back-to-back 3 days, right?
No, and the team are really good at spacing them. So, for example, I might have one at 8 a.m. I'll have another one at maybe 12 and another one at 4, maybe, if I do need to do 3. Because I think you need that little bit of time to re-prepare yourself, downtime from the last one, and then re-prep yourself for the next one.
Yeah, perfect. Matt's asking, is it 1 review per year per client? It's actually a mixture, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think with the compliance world we're now in, we actually only promise 1 review now as part of our agreements, but we often can deliver more than that with certain clients. The reason we haven't promised more with certain clients, of course, is we now know from an ASIC point of view that if you say you're going to do 2 reviews and you don't do them,
refund.
You've got a refund. So it's better to under-promise and over-deliver.
Yep.
I think now than ever before. But all our clients know that the main review meeting is a big unpack of their situation. So it's quite an extensive review.
Yep.
Almost like starting from scratch again. It's not quite like that, but it's, it's obviously that's part of that review. And then obviously we might well have video conferences with the client throughout the year. Most of my top clients I'm talking to probably on the phone every couple of months anyway, because there'll be a casual conversation or something along those lines. So it's 1 promised, which is what we call a major review, and then there's multiple other touch points throughout the year.
Matt's question is really relevant as well. How are they delivered? Office, virtual? Do you go to them? Do they come to you? Is there rules around that?
So when I started many years ago, that it was obviously the industry was quite a lot about going to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than coming to us now, and we're very assumptive about our review meetings. It's the diary booking is for them to come here, and if they can't come here, then there needs to be a reason for me to go there. So I obviously have some elderly clients I look after, and I will go to them because it's obviously just logistically better for them. I have some business owners, I will go to their businesses' addresses because that makes sense. But they get charged accordingly.
Love it. Yeah, a lot. Whenever we've spoken about everything from pricing to reviews, I think a big part of what your strength is you're very assumptive. When you're putting a price or you're putting a service offer, it's more of a, this is what we're going to do, opposed to, what do you think? Is that okay? And I think that's a real strength to just walk in there and go, I assume I'm your advisor and you're going to take my advice. So here's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. I think you've got to, it's a combination of the base compliance work that you have to do for the client, the amount of interaction that you will have with that client, and then the strategy and the complexity that you're delivering to that client.
Perfect. I want to ask, Chris has got a good question, but before we jump into that, man, if there's someone on the program and they're listening to this and there are sort of 3 modules or habits on the program you think they should, and they're, by the way, they're in that space where they're doing too much, they're overwhelmed, they've got fuzzy, they've got all this stuff. And there's 3 habits, which we could link to something they could check out on the member site. What are 3 that you think have been most useful for you?
I think if you can crack the time management piece and then link that in with the priority piece, I think you're going to go a long way to solving a lot of your problems. And this is something that I've learned over the years and certainly wasn't very good at it when I started. I've got a lot better at it as time's gone on. So for me, by batching, by managing emails correctly, and then also then prioritizing. So the old Stephen Covey book, where he talks about the different types of tasks that you have, whether they're urgent or important. If something's urgent and important, you need to do it like now. If something's not very urgent, but it's pretty important, then you can do it later, right?
Yeah.
If it's urgent but not important, you can obviously potentially give it to someone else to do.
Yeah, ideally.
And if it's not urgent and not important, then don't do it at all.
There's a saying, and I think we've mentioned it before, what got you to where you are now is get you to the next level. And I think a lot of people, particularly if you think you're the person that can manage the emails and stuff, eventually you're going to get in your own way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's about prioritize. So I'm very cognizant about what are the most important things I need to do today, and trying to put them at the top of the list and make sure that I'm planning my day accordingly. So my first 30 minutes of the day are about planning what I'm going to do during the day. And then you do whatever it is you want to do, but just make sure you just have it structured accordingly. So, and I'm trying to do the hardest, most important things first. I don't always do it, but generally I try to, because I want to get them out of the way, and I feel like I've achieved something if I've then done those. But it's a really hard thing to get yourself to do. It's a bit like going to the gym, isn't it? At 6 o'clock in the morning, you've got to force yourself to go. But once you go and once you've done it, you're going to feel so much better at the end of it.
But it doesn't. The interesting thing is it's hard at the beginning, but then it becomes a habitual thing. Like, how many times do you jump in and you just sit down at the desk and you open the email, and you're not even thinking about it. And the problem is, as soon as you open the inbox, it's everybody else's demands are right there in front of you, and it's full of urgent stuff, and very rarely does stuff come into your inbox which is important.
So don't open the inbox.
I don't open the inbox in the first, I know a lot of people are very productive, do not open their inbox until at least 10 o'clock.
Yeah, do what's important to you first. So that, I suppose those are the key things. So the time management piece, which again is a skill and you work on, it's something I've developed over time, with the batching, etc., which is good. Email, and then obviously just planning your day from it's really basic stuff, right? This is not rocket science, but it's just that habit forming things that you need to do.
It is, yeah. And the problem is, as soon as people get busy, like now, what's the first thing that goes out the window is the habits.
Yeah. I don't like the word busy.
I don't like the word busy. I basically, that story I told about, you're on the laptop, kid walks in, play with me, and you go, I'm too busy. And the second scenario is the same kid walks in with a 10-inch nail sticking through their foot. You drop everything, right? And the difference between the two is you're actually lying the first time. You should have said, playing with you is not as important to me as what I'm doing right here and now. And the truth is that if you're too busy, it's actually too busy to do something. It means it's not a priority. And sometimes when you're deep in the work, we have really bad at identifying priorities. It's the whole, when you knee-deep in alligators, you don't think to drain the swamp, right?
Yeah, and I think we've tried to. I often wonder what a client hears when you say you're busy. What do they actually hear? Are they hearing that, well, you haven't got time for me? So it's an interesting word, busy, because we use it so frequently with everyone, and we all do it. We're all guilty of using it. But I often say, if a client says, how are you? And I say, I'm busy. Does a client think that I don't have time for their needs? I don't know. It's an interesting question.
I come from perspectives, particularly when I'm working with a business, and part of the problem we're trying to solve, and often the first problem we're trying to solve is we need to create capacity. And we create a project, and it's like the project is there, pricing does it, processes do it, delegation does it, and then a couple of weeks later you check in, how's it going? I've been busy. And you kind of tear your hair out, because it's like the project we're doing is the thing that's supposed to free up your time so we can do other stuff. And then a month later we're having to do a bit of an intervention because there's all this cool stuff you want to do, which is going to increase revenue and lead flow, but we just can't get past this. All we need is 2 hours or 3 hours a week just to do that. And then you'll create 10, 15, 20 hours. It drives me nuts. It really does. Yeah. Hey, one final question. Let's get on to the review, shall we?
Yep.
So Chris just wants a quick run through of what back-end process do you use to compress the admin and document prep time? Good question.
So our workflow and processes are all built in Teamwork. So that's the primary place where we're operating our workflows.
Yep.
Obviously, everyone's on that. All commentary, discussions, and processes are built through that.
Yep.
So if we're in the process, there should be no external communications through email. It should all be done through Teamwork and through the process.
Okay.
So that cuts down on the traffic, through external sources. So that tends to... documentation, obviously, that's required is templated in Teamwork. We can just pull out and adapt where we need to.
Okay.
So all that stuff sits in there ready to go. So it's a bouncing ball, right? So it's 10 steps or whatever the steps will be for each part of the review, and everyone follows that in order. So,
perfect. And document generation, I know you were toying around with a few tools to do this.
So are you talking about numbers, or are you talking about what sort of documentation?
I'm assuming advice documentation is what Chris wants to know. And hopefully, Chris, the audio is improved. I'm assuming Chris is talking about sort of proposals and SOAs.
So in terms of how we deliver any sort of interactive information to the client, we tend to use a proposal or a presentation software called Quilla.
Yep.
And we actually present our SOAs through Quilla now. The actual document sits behind that. There is effectively a Word document we utilize for compliance purposes, which is accessible to the client, of course. But our actual presentation of what our recommendations are or what changes are going to occur or is done through this Quilla app. So a lot of that is templated. Obviously, then it's manually changed, but it takes minutes to change stuff, not hours. So. Perfect.
Out of interest, when you've implemented this sort of stuff, what sort of time savings would you estimate that you get out of these habits every week that you didn't have before?
Oh, I reckon I'm probably getting a day back.
Beautiful. Love it.
I would suggest about a day. Yeah.
Sweet. Quilla is QWILR.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, James, I might shoot you through. We created a new checklist called Time Saver Checklist.
Right.
Where we've taken the 14 most time-saving sort of things you can do from the program, and we add it all up, and we reckon there's 36 hours worth of savings in there. So it's literally the 4-hour work week, I'm hoping.
Yeah, fantastic.
So you've got the time back. You've got your day back a week, and now it's time to sort of jump in and nail the review. Talk to me about what you did to make it more efficient and effective, and in particular, better experience as well.
So I suppose some of the efficiencies come through that initial setup of the review. So making sure that all the processes are templated and everyone's following the same process for every single review. So there's very, very few deviations from that. So that obviously creates regularity in terms of what we're doing. So the team know what they're doing. So it becomes quite efficient from that point. So there's no bespoke nature to the setup process as such, because we're running that the same for everyone. So that then allows us to create some efficiencies through that. So that's the first thing. Obviously, it then gives all that information will come to me, and I will then spend half an hour to an hour of my time prepping myself for that meeting. So I'm taking all that information, I'm analysing what are the key things that I need to concentrate on the review, what are the key talking points. We have a standardised agenda that we run through, which is a standardised structure.
Yep.
And we keep that pretty simple, but what we then do is build on each of the subject matters within that standardised agenda.
Yep.
And the review very much follows that agenda from that point of view. So we'll be talking, all the standard stuff you would talk about in a review. Talk to me a little bit about, your goals and objectives. How have they changed over the last 12 months? What key things have happened? Remember we had these goals 12 months ago. How have they changed going forward? What are the key things that have happened? What's happened with your income and your expenses? How have those changed over the last 12 months? And we're talking, so you're talking about all the things you should be talking about as part of a holistic review, Right. Your health, your children, your education requirements for the kids, or, one thing we've concentrated quite a lot on with clients going forward now is the expenses side. So we spend a lot of time with the clients trying to nut out their expenses as much as we possibly can.
Okay.
The issue I've always had with statements of advice and reviews is when a client tells you this is what they spend, they're probably lying.
Yeah.
Right? So I actually am a huge believer. I think once you write an SOA, I think the moment you write it, it's wrong.
Yep.
Right. So this is an inherent problem we have in the industry, which I don't think is going away. But so that's the issue I have with it. So it's about trying to get those accurate numbers as we can from the clients. Now, not all clients will play this game.
Yep.
Clients won't play it. That's fine. Some of our wealthier clients don't see the need for budgeting and expenses management. That said, I still think it's important.
So let me ask the question here, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and budgeting is hard. Getting people to tell the truth, not to mention analyze the data. What are your thoughts on asking people, like, how much do you think you can save? Do you have a system for doing it? If they don't have a system, set them up with it, but base the engagement on them being accountable for delivering you a certain outcome. And let's say you say, I want you to save $20,000 over the next 6 months.
Yep.
And at the halfway mark, you notice they've only saved $5,000 and jump on a call and go, what's going on? Why are we halfway behind? In other words, putting the onus on them to deliver you the result and then jumping in if it's not happening. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the problem is you can't make people do stuff. That's the thing. It's like going to a personal trainer. He'll tell you what to do, but he's not going to do the push-ups for you. At the end of the day, you see, I've always had this slight issue with this whole best interest duty that which I thought we were doing or have been doing for the last 20 years. I didn't realise it was a new thing. But but that said, I think it's interesting that before we have a best interest duty to the client, the client has to have a best interest duty to themselves.
Jeez.
Right?
Yeah.
If a client hasn't got a best interest duty to themselves and their family, you're certainly not going to deliver it for them. So I think at the heart of this, there has to be a client's willingness to actually go down this path and say, okay, I'm prepared to make some changes. It's not for me to tell them to keep Foxtel or get rid of Foxtel.
Yeah.
But if their goal is, I want to be here in 20 years, they need to be, and they need to cut their expenditure by 10,000, and they're not prepared to do that, that goal can't be that important.
I agree. Like, one of the things, obviously, what I do is people tell me they want accountability. The truth is, no, like, if I was to give, full on accountability, it doesn't feel nice. And in actual fact, a lot of the time people want the result of accountability. They don't necessarily want me on their back, telling them, have you done this? Have you done this? Because what it does, it creates a negative feedback loop.
Yep.
And that's the challenge. You've got to tell people, so if this is the goal and we agree to engage in a certain way, if you don't hit your goal and you don't engage with me, do I have the permission to call you on the behavior? Because you can't, as you said, you can't drive people to do something they don't want to do, but you can remind them that they told you they wanted to do something and they're not behaving that certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really comes down to how important those objectives are and what they're prepared to do to get them to those objectives. So, and that's really ultimately what it comes down to. But you can't make them do stuff. At the end of the day, you can only, do what you can do.
Yeah, you can only remind them. Let's talk about the conversation, because there's two pieces I really want to ask. One is Matt's question around tracking progress. But the second question ties into the experience.
Yep.
Like, how motivate people? Because money can be, if it's positioned wrongly, it can be demotivating. So the review, I'd imagine the way you do it is a big part of that is managing their energy, getting their focus back in, reminding them why they're doing it. Talk a bit about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I think that part of this comes about taking the focus away from the investment piece. Because everyone in reviews has talked about investments. It's like, the first question a client asks is, how are we going? How are my investments doing? What was the percentage we made last year?
Yeah.
I hate that question, and I avoid it at all costs, because it's ultimately, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's ultimately not the whole story.
Yeah.
So it's really about, so what we try and do with our reviews is we actually redo what we call a current status report. So where they sit now compared to where they were last year. Are they tracking in the right direction? And we run this very simply through Excel spreadsheets. There's not anything very complex. We present it in a different way, but actually in terms of how we track the numbers, not complicated to do, very, very simply. And are they actually tracking towards their goal? What's the gap analysis? Are they short? Are they over? Are they on track? Has their goal completely changed?
Yep.
Because that can happen too, right? So really about focusing on what their objectives are rather than the actual, I suppose, the investment vehicles that are delivering that objective.
And how important is it for that Excel report to be absolutely 100% accurate, or the numbers that you're putting in front of people?
I think it's relative to what they're trying to. At the end of the day, accuracy around the numbers change every day, so you can't be 100% accurate all the time.
Yeah.
But I think what's more important is that they reaffirm what they want. And this is by both partners, by the way. I think it's really important that you get both partners on the same page with this. And they're ultimately committing to what they're going to do over the next 12 months. So you analyze what they've done. You might look at where there's some holes or things they could do better or things that we could do better. And then you're actually getting them to commit to what we're going to be doing over the next 12 months going forward. And that ultimately leads you into your engagement, your ongoing service agreement, right?
Absolutely.
What are you going to be doing going forward? So I think we spoke the other day about IOOF has gone now to annual contracts.
Yes.
Rather than ongoing service agreements. And ultimately, I think this is where it ultimately might end up. Is, what are the core things you're going to be doing for the client, but also what are the additional things you're going to add on through the next 12 months? So what are you going to charge for that?
I totally agree. I mean, I think I've always imagined that your reviews are less about you delivering and more about a conversation.
Always.
And they're telling you what they want, and they're telling you where they think they're at, and you're sort of correcting some things. And I think if you, as you have done, you can have a review where people want to come in and they're having this conversation, they leave knowing exactly what they are and clear on what they want next, and they're excited and motivated. Retention is not going to be an issue. Paying the money is not going to be an issue because they perceive that what you do as being an integral part of getting them to the goal.
Oh, absolutely. I suppose you've got to ask yourself the question, how do you want your clients to feel when they leave your office?
Love it. How do you want them to feel, James?
Do you want your clients to feel, well, I want them to feel about where I am. I feel better about where we're heading, and I'm comfortable with what James has delivered for me over the last 12 months, and I'm comfortable with what I commit to over the next 12 months going forward. At the end of the day, what clients are really looking for is they're looking for you to reduce the complexity so they don't have to deal with it.
Yep.
They want, obviously, you to take action. They want to feel safer about where they are, right? And they want you to help them with those trade-off discussions.
Love it. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the packup. So what do you do after the appointment that enables you to sort of get out the pit lane faster?
So packup starts with really me debriefing or getting the information that I've learned from the meeting out of my head. So as the advisor, I feel I'm responsible for the file notes. Right. Yep. So even though Keith is in the meeting with me and backs me up in that, I'm very much responsible for that. So we actually record, we do audio file notes. Now, I don't know if you've done this, but a 6 or 7 minute audio file note is actually quite a lot of words.
Yeah, it is a huge amount.
So it's interesting. I actually think you get far more detail with an audio file note than you ever will with a written one. So
in 60 minutes, you can get 1,000 to 1,400 words.
Well, there you go. That's something I've learned today, you see. So, and then as part of that, I then do, we have a review board in a program called monday.com that we utilize, which takes me about 20 minutes to do.
Yep.
Basically, it's some check boxes and some tick boxes that allow me then to pass on my thoughts to Keith and the paraplanning team about what I want to happen next. Now, it might be nothing or might be very little, of course, or it might be a full statement of advice. It depends. But that's the handoff. Perfect.
Matt says he started audio file notes about a month ago. He's down to 20 to 30 minutes. That's way too long. Are you using a framework, Matt? As in a set sort of bullet points you are? Maybe we need to chat about that because that's long file notes.
Yeah, it's good to have a template if you've got just to go. I actually use the agenda from the meeting and I talk to the agenda. That works for me.
That works really well. I mean, it also depends on your license, but a lot of licenses got a very specific way you want to do it. Sometimes it helps to get the basic structure, put it on a one-pager and go that way. But I think the agenda, it makes sense for a flow perspective if you know what needs to be in there.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
So that's, and then the team will run the packup, and the packup might be, as I say, an ROA, and it might be an ROA of no advice or no change. It might be a full SOA, and then we'll run obviously into the SOA process.
Yep.
That will run from there, and obviously we'll deliver that advice back to the client. And at that stage, obviously, we're looking to reset the next review.
Beautiful.
Which is a really important part of that process. So we're gauging the client and saying, look, we're going to do this the same time next year, but in the meantime, we're going to have a call in October. And we're going to do the implementation post-review for that as well.
Lovely. And again, how you used to do reviews versus how you do them now, where's the efficiency gain? Is it taking you less time? Are you getting more done? What's been the benefit of the way you do it now?
I think that if I was really honest, that the review process before was a bit ad hoc and a bit bespoke, and you can't create efficiencies when it's bespoke like that, not unless you're charging a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
So now the efficiencies just really come through replication of similar tasks right throughout the process. So that's worked really, really well from that point of view. So that's really where the efficiency. It's a very strict process. That doesn't mean to say it can't vary if it needs, but you need to have your staff saying, okay, this is the way we do things and we're happy to run with this process. And if it needs changing, that's fine. We can change it. If there's bottlenecks, that's okay. We can solve them. Yep. But you've got to start with a process and develop and morph it from there.
So would you say that you're 50% more efficient? You're getting stuff done
Probably, I would say probably 30 to 40% more efficient than we were.
Which, if you think about it, 148 reviews.
But I'm also doing less of the work. So, because I've got the team set up the way. So my time, I've probably got over half of my time back in terms of reviews.
50% of your time back. Beautiful.
And if you add that with the time management stuff, so you start to, I may be able to go and play golf one day again.
Rather you than me. I'm terrible at golf, as you well know. Let's talk about the final sort of piece in the puzzle, because we had a conversation. Was it 2 years ago?
Yep.
No, it was about a year and a half ago, and we looked at the shape of your business.
Yep.
And there was a certain amount of sort of legacy revenue.
Yep.
And you made a decision at that point that you were going to assume it was gone.
Yes.
And started a process of transitioning clients across. And the review was a big part of that, because ultimately, I think when we spoke about it, you said having a really good experience, being able to visualize it and give people that perspective was really the platform for then having that conversation about the transition. Talk us through the pricing. How did you do it? What were the results?
So just in some context, so my grandfather commissions about $42,000 a year. So it's not a lot, right? Mm-hmm. But I've sort of almost assumed that's gone, and it's sort of just dead money. And there is programs out there where people say, well, you should try and re-engage those grandfather commissioned clients. And I think there's a chance you could do some of that. But the reality is that a lot of these grandfather commission stuff are not very active clients generally. So you're always better. Yes, of course, you want to try and re-engage them, but you don't put your hopes on it, because it's not going to happen. So we went down a path of, because of the regulatory changes going through, we want to make sure that we're pricing our service accordingly going forward. So we did a repricing. We reanalyzed all the numbers, looked at the minimum cost to serve, and then added in things like how many meetings we're going to have a year and complexities around it. And we came up with a price.
Yep.
Then we went to, then every review meeting had a price conversation as part of that review meeting. Now, some clients, it was a small uplift. Some clients, it was a big uplift. All of those conversations certainly started. When I first started doing it, I found it actually quite difficult.
Yep.
Feel like I'm actually very competent doing it now. I don't have any issues about asking for more money. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But because I know the numbers and I know what it costs to serve, I'm very comfortable now saying we can't do this for less than that.
And what is your minimum? James, Matt said, are you happy to share your minimum cost to serve?
Yeah, so we know for actual cost, this is without profit, our minimum's about $3,800 for a full our service, and it does vary slightly. So really, our base now is coming in. If you want to 40% EBIT on that, you really got to be looking at 6,000 plus, I reckon, for clients. And people, I've had lots and lots of people saying that's too much, and do you know what? It might be for some people.
Yeah,
I know what I've run the numbers. We've actually tracked through teamwork every task we've done on every review for the last 12 months.
Love teamwork for that.
And it's really, and the numbers, and I was actually really, really surprised with the numbers, because I didn't think the numbers would be that high. Now, some of that, I will say, of course, some of those numbers could be blown out through inefficiencies or specific things that happen with the client. But I still think that that's where the number needs to be. I reckon anything sub $5,000 a year ongoing, I think you're going to struggle. I really do.
I'll add to that. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and if anybody is sort of early stage, are you running out of time? I know we're going out.
No, that's
cool. A lot of businesses start off and they go, okay, we'll start off charging cheap. And then later on in their journey, they decide they're going to increase the price. It's the wrong way around. It really is. Because you need at the beginning to get the resources in so you can invest in the team and the software. And then later on, when you start to get efficiency and hopefully, you're getting a bit of niching, so you're starting to deal with regular problems for specific kind of people, then you can start to compete on price. But I think competing on price, particularly when you're going through a growth journey, it's the hardest way of doing it.
Yeah, so and we found that uplift process that we've taken the clients through has been actually a really good experience for a lot of clients. I mean, I'm surprised how little pushback we've had from that process. In terms of, I think about over the last 18 months, we've roughly had about $80,000 in uplifts.
That's not including the new business that came in.
No, that's just current clients doing reviews, where we've had about an $80,000 uplift. And then we've got about another 60,000 in the pipeline at the moment.
And that's uplift?
That's uplift as well.
Yep.
And then the actual new business, we've obviously got new ongoing work where we've got new clients we've engaged. There's probably another 60 to 65,000 there.
Beautiful.
And in terms of what we've lost about 17,000.
And I love the fact that you sat down and you segmented your clients. Love, like, indifferent, not so much.
Yeah. Well, I think I actually had a client that I've got to be honest, I don't like working with very much at all. And we went through the uplift price and I effectively doubled her fees.
Yeah.
She paid them. So, which was, I thought she was going to walk and she didn't. But I actually feel, because I'm getting, I'm actually earning about 7,500 from her a year now, I actually feel much better about our relationship. It's funny that.
Yeah, and I mean, you do a lot of the modelling and things as well. So the kind of client base, you're not sitting there, you're actually realising that they can afford to work with you and get the result they want better than their own. So, yeah. So, dude, this is, it's a great story. And I think I love the fact that, you've just got better and better as you've gone at the conversation, at really putting it on the table. Because at the end of the day, the pricing model that we went through, we weren't making it up. That was what your business. And you were tracking processes and you were like, is that the right number? Is that how long it takes? And it was. And the business was telling you, dude, if you want to be successful, if you want to create capacity in your week, if you want to be able to do really good work with clients, that's what you need to charge. And at that point, you've got a choice. You can either change the business or change your attitude towards pricing.
Yeah.
James,
I think that's the reality of where the industry is going, unfortunately. I'm not saying it's great for people that can't afford advice, but that's just the reality of the numbers in terms of what you have to do from a compliance point of view. It
is. And obviously the unintended consequences, realized or not, is that advice is going to become inaccessible to a few people, and hopefully it'll go back the other way. But the reality is, at this point in time, everybody's got clients to look after. And in order for you to be able to do that, you've got to have a sustainable business model. Pricing is just a big part of that. Should we go through and just clean up a bunch of the questions that have been asked? James, this has been incredibly useful. You've been absolutely awesome. What have we got? How many reviews can one planner manage? We kind of indicated that for you, 140 feels, 120, 110, 100 feels like about the right amount.
Yeah. Can I say on that, though, I'd like to reduce that number, but make the reviews more engaging, if I can, even more so. So I'd rather get higher fees, have less meetings, and have the even better reviews as part of that, if I can. Yeah. And that's something we're working on. So although that is a number, I think you could reduce that and make the meetings even more engaging.
I caught up with a gentleman called Keith Jones while I was in the Philippines, and his strategy was he'd go in and buy a business, and then every year just say goodbye to the bottom 20% of the clients. Now, whatever your view on that, he built a high net worth business very quickly. Yeah, sure. Meaningful for clients. Hopefully, Rachel, we covered off on how to make them meaningful. James, any thoughts on what's the number one thing that you would do in order to make the reviews more meaningful? More meaningful. I think it's ultimately about the psychology of how they leave the room, right? It's not about the numbers, but they've got to feel like they're encouraged to do what they're doing, that they've got some. I actually think it's nice that they've got someone they can blame as well. That's what you have an advisor. But it's really about a confidence thing. They've got to feel confident about leaving that review, that they've spoken through the trade-offs that they've got to work out from an objectives point of view. Yep. They know what action they've got to take. You've helped them reduce the complexity around the situation. And that's really what it is. So I think the fluffy stuff is important. People need to feel a certain way when they leave, I think. I think if you are not having an emotional impact on clients in your first appointment in a review, you're not delivering an experience. And that's not just opinion. That's back. People need to feel something. They need to be moved emotionally in order to be impacted. Absolutely. Matt asks, how much contact is required in terms of your ongoing service? I think if you've got, obviously the process, the review process is what it is. So there's obviously the contact through that. I think you should have an idea of what your touch points for those clients are throughout the year. Now, some of those will be automated and some of them will be personal and manual. I have apart from obviously the review, I have an absolute 6 monthly call I have with all clients as part of that. That's in there. And then there's a plethora of emails that you'll generally get from clients throughout the year anyway. So, at the end of the day, and then also the social media side, I mean, I'm not a big, Amanda, my wife, does all that in the business. But the social media side, I've realized is important
that your clients understand that you're there and you're delivering something. It's not about getting new clients for me. It's about providing my current clients with information that they might find useful. So all those points of contact are continual nudges to the client. So when they think about financial planning, they think about you first.
Yeah.
And that's where your referrals come from.
Top of mind.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. I was told the other day, you can't use referrals anymore because it's a negative word. You've got to use introductions.
I like that. Introduction.
So anyway.
No, that's good. And I look on that, you know how I'm pretty passionate about the client engagement thing. And I think people see it as a big, I've got to do a blog or I've got to do a video. But once you get into it, you realize that, you can do a short video, send it out. You don't have to top and tail. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it's a bit of you going out to 200 people, which is much easier than making 200 phone calls.
Absolutely. It can be anything as long as it's relative, and it relates to them in some way, shape or form. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you're still the number one thing they think about when they think about financial planning.
It doesn't mean, by the way, it doesn't mean you don't make the phone calls. It just means you don't have to rely on that as your only means of continuing to be in contact.
You can actually do a client calendar of almost what those touch points are throughout the year as a standard. And then obviously you could bespoke that for certain clients and certain packages, depending on what you're doing. But now I do a big budget update. Budget's my big thing I do every year. And my budget update goes to my clients. It's on their email at 6 a.m. on the Wednesday morning. Yeah. After the budget, because I want to be the first person. No, it's just a thing I've always done.
No, it is.
I don't want anyone else to get there first. I want to be there first, right?
So first in my inbox.
Yeah.
Okay, James is up. So right, a good question, packup. Do you check the ROA SOA and are you involved in the implementation of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's some interesting developments on that. We've actually just literally just implementing a new system to check our SOAs from a regulatory and a best interest duty. It's a piece of software called Tick, and it pretty much does. It doesn't do the whole thing, but it does about 70% of your reading of an SOA for you from a regulatory point of view.
Wow.
Does it have SOA on the front page? Does it have your ABN on it? And it's something they code, and we're literally going through it now. That to me is going to help save me a huge amount of time, I think, in terms of checking SOA. Because yes, right, I do check them because you have to. So Keith often checks it first, and then I'll have a look over it as well. But this is obviously going to cut that time down. And I think Tick is $100 a month.
Whoa!
Now we're self-licensed, so we can obviously go down this path. Some people won't be able to go down this path, but for me, what it means is that we don't have then a sample of SOAs that are checked. We have every SOA checked.
That's good. That's really, RegTech is big, eh?
And look, ASIC like that sort of stuff, right? They like to see a framework whereby you're trying to be as compliant as you can. I don't want to read 60 pages of SOAs, every time. If I can get someone to do some of the heavy lifting on that, then so be it.
So, Ryder, if you recall when we had dinner down in Canberra, and your friend, I can't remember his name, and I turned around to him and said, he was a lawyer. I said, how do you deal with reading through so many documents? And he says, well, in a year one lawyer, it takes you 8 hours to go through a document. But after the second year, it's 3 or 4. And then eventually you can look through a document and you look at the structure and you're looking for the deviation. Yeah. And I think that's one of the ways, it's the way that the software works. But I think, again, structure, if you have structure to your documents, it makes it easier to go through as opposed to making them up every time. Are you cool for a couple more questions, James?
Yeah, sure.
Jess has got a good question. If I can just find it. It is, what is your main source of leads and new clients? And what's your current growth and retention rate? Very specific questions, Jess.
Yeah, so growth rate, so main source of clients is referrals, 100%.
Yep.
We have obviously various centers of influence, lawyers, accountants, mortgage brokers. We're very specific with them about the type of clients we want. And that's where the majority of our clients come from. Look, I'll be really honest, we're not trying to grow ridiculously. I'm very happy if I get one client a month. That's all I really need. And if I can get that client, that client somewhere between an ongoing service agreement between 7 and 15 grand a year, that's where I want to be. So I'm not trying to hit the lights out in terms of growth rates. I'm quite happy to do this in this new world that we're in. I think you've got to be very cautious about how you grow organically. Yeah. The type of clients you take on.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be buying anything right now. I think acquisition is difficult at the moment.
Yeah.
A retention rate, in terms of the uplifts, you saw I think those numbers I gave, we lost about 17 grand.
So I think when I looked at the numbers, you had 90. I think you lost 6 clients. Five clients out of 116. So it was like 97% retention.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. That's absolutely fine. And we will lose more going forward, and that's okay too.
The whole thing is, when we did your pricing, the question we asked, would you rather have, would you mind losing 20% of your client base if you could match the revenue because of the uplift? And you're like, no, that would give me time back.
Yep.
And the same is true of new clients. If you're bringing on, if every single client's saying yes, 3 clients who are coming in and they're paying $3,000 each, and your option is, if you look at the numbers and it's right for the client and it's right for the business, you could charge $5,000 and you get 2 of them. You're going to be able to do better work. And that's where we're at right now. And you can disagree with the affordability of advice, but when you step back and you look at it commercially, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Couple more questions and we'll let you go. How do you present the review ROA SOA? How do you present it?
Yeah, so it's actually the core document is a Word document, which is not what we present though. No, the reason we do it in a Word document is so it can be checked by this RegTech system, because it has to be in Word. That sits behind what we present, which is done through Quilla. So that's a summary of that. A lot of that is templated, and then we obviously then put we put the color and the detail around that. It takes once the SOA or ROA document is done, it takes about another 20 to 30 minutes to do that presentation document, which we can either then present to the client or we can send through a link, and they can actually accept it digitally.
Right.
So we don't necessarily need to present it to the client in person if we don't want to, or we can do it online I think how we present SOAs and ROAs is an important thing, not probably for today, but something we could talk about again. Yeah, it's because I think most documents are very unengaging.
Yeah.
So I think we need to work on that, all of us, including me. So.
I agree. I think the visual side. Zraida, how do you get rid of clients you don't want to work with?
Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can price them out. That's one way of doing it. That doesn't always work, though, as I explained earlier. I think you've just got to be really honest with clients about how you can service them going forward. I think if they are prepared to pay the fee, then they should have a right to stay, as long as you want to work with them. But often you'll find clients coming off a $2,000 annual review fee, and trying to jump that to 6 or 7 is a leap too far often for some. That sometimes you can, it depends how much, I really believe it depends how much you like the client as well. Sometimes you'll do a transitional thing with a client to get them up to the right level because you actually really like the client and you want to work with that client. But I think it is difficult to just say to a client, I don't want to work with you anymore.
One way you can do it is say, look, there's been a lot of change in the industry, and one of the things that's happening is more businesses are having to really focus down. And the truth is that the kind of work we're doing now is moving in a different direction from the kind of work we've traditionally done for you. And it's, I don't think it's in your best interest to continue to work with us, given the fee, we would need to charge to continue to do that work because it's not our sweet spot. And what I'd like to do is help find you somebody who can do the work and can do it at a price that I think is appropriate. So that's kind of a sweet way of doing it. So, website for Tick, any idea?
Sorry?
Tick, the software. Any idea what the website is?
I think it's TIQK.
Hey, there it is.
IO.
There you go. Ian's all over it, being a paraplanning persuasion. Love it.
There you go.
Jess, you sound like you're on a bit of a growth path, if I don't mind saying so. How do you stipulate what types of clients you work with through your referral partners? Are your referrals formalized? And what would be the percentage of referrals from current referral partners versus referrals from clients? Very specific. How do you tell referral partners what kind of clients you want?
I think it's been easier since the Royal Commission, actually, because we sat down and we've been quite specific with referral partners as saying, look, we're on this holistic approach now. These are the type of clients that we typically deal with. This is the process that we go through with a client. And I think you've got to be quite clear of the process you take them through. That way you can, they get an idea of what sort of clients would sit. But you've got to be quite specific, I think, about what you want, because I think clients, centers of influence are great. They want to do the right thing and they want to refer, but they'll often just refer anything if they think the value. So you've often got to say to them, look, thank you very much for that last referral, but it's not the type of client we generally deal with. Just want to make, give them that positive feedback. And that's why I tend to meet with them as regularly as I can to talk through the type of clients that we're working on together. and the type of clients we want to work with going forward. So
I think sometimes communicating the problems that you help people with. So the kind of things that I help people with are when they've got this problem, and the people who tend to have that problem, who I can help best are this.
Yeah.
People tend to spot problems, is a more effective way, and that's usually tied to a kind of person.
Yep.
Referrals, formalized referrals. How do you reward people? And Helen wants to know, do you pay referral fees?
Absolutely not.
No way.
No, I really have. For a long time ago I used to, but I don't now at all. And everything we do referral is on we're the right people for the job. If they want their clients looked after and they want the right people to do it, we're happy to do that, but we're not going to pay a fee for it.
There is 100 different ways of delivering value to each other. That's got nothing to do with money. I'd actually argue, you can use your network skills, you can train the team up, you can do marketing together, you can help each other. It doesn't have to be about the money. And I personally agree with you. I think money confuses the issue.
And it's, ultimately, it's getting more and more conflicted, right? So It's becoming more and more problematic. So we generally don't go down that path at all.
And final question on referrals, percentage of referrals from partners versus clients.
I reckon it's probably about 50-50 at the moment.
Nice.
I heard from another colleague of mine that they run a private wealth company, a sort of higher net worth.
Yep.
They put out an email to their top 20 clients saying, look, we really appreciate the referrals that you've sent us through over the last 12 months, but we're closing our book for 12 months because we're just, they got smashed. So I think there's sometimes it depends on how you're talking to your clients about it. So if you say to your clients, I'm busy, they won't refer you anything, right? So I think you got to be careful what you wish for sometimes and what you speak. So I think it's about 50-50, but I'm pretty agnostic about where they come from. I don't, as long as that they are the right type of client. So that sounds a bit snobbish, doesn't it? I don't mean it like that. But
no, I mean there's certain types of people you help best, and there's certain types of people that you're probably going to be drawn to help because you're that kind of person. But
sure.
It's opportunity cost, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mate, this has been, as always, totally engaging. I just wanted to jump in and I'd like to get some final words from you before we go. Reviews, time management, pricing. What's coming up in the next 6 months? Let us know what you think.
I think it's probably, unfortunately, going to get worse before it gets better. But I think the other side looks amazing if we can all get there from an industry point of view. I really, really do. I was talking to a friend of mine in the UK last week, and I know they lost almost 70% of advisors when they went through RDR in the UK. But I actually think the other side looks really good. If we get through this next couple of years, I think it looks really, really, really positive.
I agree.
So, and I think now that, if we can all get rid of that word busy and start concentrating on actually delivering some services to clients, as I say, it's everything in business is negotiable except quality, right?
I agree. I've got it written down here. If you're overwhelmed, 6 steps. Work out what you actually need to do between now and the end of the year. Schedule time and block it out in the diary, like you did, James. Get focused. Don't get distracted. Don't try and do it in between meetings. Get just the information you need and nothing more on how to do it. Get it completed as quickly as you possibly can, and then finally, make sure you're managing capacity. And as I said, pricing, as you know, is one of the biggest levers. You can literally increase your revenue. Same thing, dude. This has been amazing. Anything else you want to say?
Probably just the last thing is I'll just say, with all the reviews and all the contact you have with your clients, there's really no substitute for personal contact. I don't think. I think it really is the backbone of what we do is actually talking to clients as, rather than emails, and all those things are great, but there's no real substitute when you can actually talk to a client. So I think that's where we're trying to strive going forward. So that's all I've got.
Love it. And if you free up your time, guess what you can end up doing?
Absolutely.
Jess said, thanks for all your answers. She really appreciate it. You're very welcome. Helen, thanks you for the most informative session. Thank you for sharing and being real. Yeah, you're as real as botulism, right? Jess, I love the honesty of this situation. Yep. Helen says, just this honesty and being real about your process. Yeah, James is pretty real. He's a model for the industry to replicate. Totally agree with that, Ian. Enjoyed the conversation, said Jess. That's awesome. Keep it coming. Michelle said, thanks, Heat. Pricing and review process pointers were the most real. Rachel wants to clone you.
God. Imagine
wow. That's good. Zoraida says, never say busy. Yeah. Do you know what? I used to, when I was back at AMP, everybody used to wander around that bug building and you go, how are you? And they go, I'm really busy. And it just drove me nuts, as it would everybody.
You know, the other problem with that is I've got a friend of mine who does the opposite. He actually tells you really how he is. Now that can be quite confronting. So it goes the other way too, right? So when people say fine. It's probably better than the alternative sometimes.
It's like when Rachel, whenever I go to Holland, I've not been there for a while, but you ask, how are you? They literally go, well, today I did this and did that, and they give you the whole story. No, it's a saying.
Fine would have been sufficient.
James, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
Thanks to everybody for coming along. As I said, if you want to connect with James, if you want to sort of chat a bit about where he does, I know James is business on a bit of growth path. So if someone out there thinks they've got opportunity to sort of connect with you, maybe do some marketing, james@millhaven.com.au. But other than that, I hope you have a great. What you got planned for the weekend, James? Anything good?
I've got my son is swimming comp on Saturday. So Homebush, it's the most soulless place in the world. If you've ever been to Homebush in Sydney, but I will be there for most of Saturday watching him swim. But that's good. And watching him swim's great. Just the venue's not so great. So
it's a cold pool, Homebush.
Yeah, it's a fast pool though.
It is. I'm sorry, it's a fast pool. But
I've learned all this. You can have slow pools and fast pools.
Sheffield in the UK apparently is the fastest pool in, if not the world, then definitely Europe. So
there you go.
Mate, you really lucked out with that. One daughter who's into horse riding and the other one's into swimming. Essentially big bills and early mornings.
It's not, well, I dropped him off at 5 a.m. this morning for squad training. So.
Oh, love it. Yep. Rachel knows all about that. That's for sure. Man, thank you. We've taken up so much of your time, but it's been incredibly insightful.
I know. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. Have a great weekend. And to everybody else who's still sticking around, have a great weekend and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
See ya. So there you have it, guys and girls. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. I hope some really great outtakes, and I hope you found that one thing that you can implement from it. Again, if you've enjoyed this, there's more to come. Please subscribe to the podcast. We're going to be mixing it up. We're going to be doing a bit of this one-to-one stuff, and we've got some cracking interviews coming up, as well as keep your eyes out for the content tactics stuff coming along, where we deliver small things that you can implement in your business week by week that take 10, 15 minutes to listen to and an hour to implement. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll stay tuned and I'll see you at the next time. Take care.